The Great Lakes. Home to over 107 million people, it's bound to have a big market. Fueling that market is the Norfolk Southern Chicago line, spanning from Cleveland, Ohio to Chicago, Illinois. The Chicago line dates back all the way to 1850, when the original tracks were built by the Michigan Southern Railway. After the acquisition of the MSR in 1914 by the New York Central Railway, the line would be heavily upgraded with new signaling, new tracks, and much more. This new section of track from the New York Central would create many legendary names in railroading, such as the Ashland Limited, Lakeshore Limited, and of course the Century Limited. Everything was going great until the year of 1968, when the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central Railroad decided to merge into the Penn Central. After the merger was approved by the U.S. government, the Penn Central would begin operations and become arguably one of the worst railroads in the history of the United States. An example of why I say this is because the Penn Central worked with a railroad called the Bangor and Aroostook to do a potato shipping service from Canada that had to be interchanged with Penn Central so they could complete their journey. The problem with this was that Penn Central left the rail cars sitting in the yard for days on end, causing the potatoes to spoil. This caused a lot of Canadian potato farms to go out of business due to their product and just never reaching their customers. Due to this horrible service all around Penn Central's network, the company ended up filing for bankruptcy in the year of 1970. At the time, that had just created the biggest bankruptcy in U.S. history, over $3.8 billion. After the demise of Penn Central, the U.S. government stepped in and created Conrail in the year of 1976. Conrail was created to help with the loss of Penn Central, as Penn Central carried a big role transporting lots of freight in Northeast America. In 1999, Conrail would split into two railways, the Norfolk Southern Railway and CSX. Each of those two companies would get an equal share of about half of Conrail's assets and lines. The Norfolk Southern Railway would be the one to acquire the Chicago line. This acquisition became official on January 1st, 2000. Present day, the Norfolk Southern Chicago line is still owned by the Norfolk Southern Railway Corporation. This line is still used very heavily every single day, seeing around 50 trains every 24 hours. Not to mention, on most of this line, those trains are doing above 50 miles an hour. Now let's head out there and get a little sample of the Norfolk Southern Chicago line. We start our journey when we cross the border from Michigan to Ohio. We fly past Canadian National's Lang Yard on our way to Toledo. We arrive at Toledo Union Station to the surprise of a Norfolk Southern intermodal train hauling west. After a couple moments of downtime, another Norfolk Southern Manifest train would pull up and continue eastbound, with a nice crew as well. last car of that Norfolk Southern eastbound manifest passed, a Norfolk Southern intermodal train would surprise us and continue east towards the Maumee River Bridge. After about 45 minutes of waiting, our next train, another eastbound Norfolk Southern intermodal train, would roll by us with an SD70 Ace in the lead. That eastbound would end up coming to a stop, and as that eastbound was waiting for clearance to cross the Maumee River, another westbound Norfolk Southern manifest would come through with 2 switcher units in the trailing position. Those 2 switcher units, SD40-2 number 3483 and GP38-2 number 5810, are probably going to Elkhart Yard for yard work. As the action calmed down in Toledo quite a bit, we decided to make our move eastbound to a little town called Millbury, Ohio. Millbury is control point 281 on the Norfolk Southern Chicago line, and the trains are absolutely flying here. After 10 minutes of being here, we'd get our first train, another Norfolk Southern westbound intermodal. The traffic here is pretty constant. Another 30 minutes of waiting would get us another Norfolk Southern eastbound manifest, probably heading to Conway Yard, with a solo BNSF locomotive in the lead. As the railroad crossings at Cherry Street activate once again, Norfolk Southern's train 33N would be absolutely highballing westbound past Millbury. Another eastbound coming at us again with another C6M leader.
Track 2, no defect. Repeat, no defect.
eastbound march continues with another eastbound manifest train. Another westbound sneaks up on us with a BNSF duo. With the BNSF power, this train is most likely to be interchanged with BNSF at the 47th Street Yard in Chicago. That makes it a very high priority train, which is probably why it's going so fast. As the shadows get longer, Norfolk Southern Train 11N was coming at us from the east.
Dude, shut up.
As I was chilling out in the shade, another westbound NS autorack snuck up on us. Another eastbound manifest train coming out of Toledo was hauling towards us. Next up would be an NS westbound sand train diverging onto track 2 to make way for another train. Once again, another eastbound intermodal flying to the docks at New York. An NS local train from Bellevue to Elkhart comes through. Another NS westbound intermodal jump scares us. And as that westbound continues on its way to Chicago, our final train of the day, a Norfolk Southern grain train also headed westbound, would come. My biggest project on this channel to date is complete. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. My thanks to Railfanner 313 for coordinating this awesome adventure, and my thanks to everyone else, that being Midwest Railfan Productions, Motor City Railfan, Dwyer 44 Productions, Lord Billy's Trains, BBTrain Travel, The Graham Track, and Mitten State Railfan. This is my biggest project I've ever attempted to make, and it took over a week to make. So thank you so much for watching, and I really do appreciate everything you've done for me in this channel. This is HSF Productions, out.